what's really nice about when you're blurring the aperture, if you're using different colors of light, so I think on the particular frame with the floating guy, we projected the logo onto the garments, and essentially when you start to blur it, it does feel like it's volumetric. Actually,
Okay.
funny enough, there is no volume.
Okay.
It's actually so fascinating. And if you have quite a light background as well, and you play with the aspect, and I can't remember exactly all the things off the top of my head, but if you play around with the actual settings, it actually creates what looks like volume, but it actually isn't. It's all in the camera tag, which is the best thing about it. You don't have to wait ages for it to render as well. Going back a few steps, like that was when I was working at the mill, and I was working as a art director at the time, and I was working with these amazing directors, and they were so inspiring to me, and I was so inspired by them. I was like, how can I become a director? How can I become a director? And then they always kept telling me, it was like, oh, you have to do personal projects, you have to show what you can do, you have to keep practicing. And luckily I did a couple of personal projects, and they went down quite well.
Thank you for being here. So, first off, I'd like to address a warm thank you to you, man. Thank you, Raj, for joining us today. It's truly an honor to have such a talented designer with us today to share insights and experiences on MDC. So, thanks for making the time for this interview, man, and welcome to Motion Designer community.
Yeah. Thank you so much for having me. I mean, it's an honor to be asked to do the interview, especially with all the talented artists that you've had on so far. So yeah, thank you so much for having me. Appreciate it.
You're welcome, man. I've been following your work for many years now, and it's such a pleasure to have you. And I would like to, for people who don't know you and your work, introduce yourself a bit to designers who would like to know more about you.
Sure. So yeah, hi everyone. I'm Raj Davsi, and I'm a creative director currently working in Future Deluxe in New York, and I recently just moved here about 3 months ago. Predominantly based in London. Currently experiencing that at the moment. But yeah, I mean, I've kind of been in the industry for about 10 years now, so had a very fruitful journey through working at companies such as the Mill, and where I kind of started up, and had a couple of internships as well along the way, one in Barcelona, and had a really grateful tutors along the way to kind of get me there. But yeah, really happy to be here.
Thank you. Yeah, how many years have you been working with Future Deluxe so far, between London and now in New York City?
It's a good question. I think it's around coming to my 4th year now. Actually, this is my 4th year. Yeah, in December it'll be 4 years. So yeah, it's been amazing. Such a crazy experience, because I actually started during actually a month before lockdown. So I moved from the Mill to Future Deluxe, so super excited to get into the studio, and had a month of in-house in the studio with everyone, and super excited. And then all of a sudden I had to work from home for literally 3 years of my Future Deluxe experience. So yeah, actually it's crazy, because I only ever worked in the actual studio for a year or so before then moving out to here. So yeah, it was pretty nuts.
Yeah, and how's it going now in New York City? Is it that different compared to London, or in terms of process, it's still it's kind of similar?
It's crazy, yeah. It's actually because Future Deluxe is based in London, LA, and Sydney, actually, and of course New York. Mm-hmm. So London is essentially the mothership, as we call it, and it has the most amount of people there. So yeah, of course, it's completely different, because I was used to having a lot of people around me. Teams were a lot bigger when directing projects, and when I moved to New York, the team is 7 of us. So coming from a team of 35, 40 to 7 was quite a shock, but a pleasant one actually. It's really intimate, and we have a really great studio culture, and we're kind of building it up from scratch. It's currently been running for about a year here at the moment, so we're still really in our infancy, and we're looking to try and grow it as big as we can as the London studio. So we're really excited to tackle on new jobs here. So yeah, it is quite different, but exciting different, I'd say.
That's thank you, man, for sharing that. But a topic that you seems really into and wanted to discuss about is the use of technology in design, in animation. So
Yes, yeah.
I've admired like several projects on your Instagram account, and I'm particularly captivated by some of your style frames. The one, for example, for
Yes.
Hublot, with
Okay,
the kind of motion blur on certain part of the character. I'm really curious about this one. Like, is it possible to tell us? Like, is the first question is a bit more technical, but tell us more about the process for this kind of images. I don't know if you have the picture in mind, but I'm talking about this character floating in the
is
air,
he floating? Yeah.
yeah, with this blue light and this kind of motion blur, or is it because of the
Yeah.
bokeh? Did you use a certain bokeh, or did you add, I don't know, like a volumetric lighting? Like, could you please tell us a bit more
Yeah.
about that
Yeah, it's
process?
good. It's a good question, actually. That was a really fun project. It was quite a small team, and it's done in London. But yeah, that technique was really fun. Actually, I'll take a couple of steps back. Like we do something called Future Play at Future Lux, and we get a couple of days where we get to experiment and play around with different tools and techniques. And I chose my time to use a scanning app on my iPhone, and I started to tell my wife to do these poses with big hoodies on and say, I'm going to scan you and then I'm going to take you into 3D. And so I made her do all these high fashion poses, and she was like, I just look like an idiot. But yeah, I made her kind of just stand there in these unusual poses. And then I took the 3D model into cinema and then started putting loads of textures on it. And then I really noticed that the 3D mesh was really bad. So then I was like, I've got to blur this a lot, actually. So it was actually then when I was using the camera tag in Redshift, I started to use a bokeh, as you just mentioned there, and started blurring the aperture, so stretching the aperture. So then it started to create these crazy streaks. And I was like, oh, that looks good. It's hiding a lot of the bad details on the mesh, but it looks quite photographic in a way as well. So it kind of started from then. And we were just waiting for a project to kind of take on the aesthetic. And, Hublot is a really great client of ours, and they're very susceptible to new changes and moving with the trend as well, and kind of trying different techniques. And yeah, we were playing around with a couple of style frames with crazy blurs, and they were really into it. So yeah, it was all in the aperture of the camera, actually just stretching it. So it's actually no motion blur or anything of such. So yeah, I definitely urge everyone to kind of play around with that. It's a really cool, fun technique.
That's great. And on some frames, did you add some volumetric lighting as well? Because on some of them, we can feel like there's some depth it's a
Yeah,
pretty interesting result actually.
yeah. So what's really nice about when you're blurring the aperture, if you're using different colors of light. So I think on the particular frame with the floating guy, we projected the logo onto the garments, and essentially when you start to blur it, it does feel like it's volumetric. Actually,
Okay.
funny enough, there is no volume.
Okay.
It's actually so fascinating. And if you
Love it.
have quite a light background as well, and you play with the aspect, and I can't remember exactly all the things off the top of my head, but if you play around with the actual settings, it actually creates what looks like volume, but it actually isn't. It's all in the camera tag, which is the best thing about it. You don't have to wait ages for it to render as well.
Yeah, I love it. I'm showing at the moment some frames you've done on your website, and yeah, I'm really in
Yes,
love
yeah,
with it, and it's really impressive. I love it. Amazing,
yeah.
amazing, man. Thank you for sharing those tips.
No, it's all good. But yeah, I mean that's what it is always the challenge is like when you try and experiment with different tools. It's like then how can we put it into a client project? And when
Exactly.
we pitching on jobs, it's always the fun task of then trying to get it into these projects. But yeah, it's great fun.
Yeah, talking about client and solving client problems. What's your process like to solve those problems by coming up with interesting creative ideas? Like, do you have any process you follow, a step by step process, or it's just like depending on the brief? Could you tell us a bit more about the way your
Yeah,
brain
sure.
working actually?
It's actually crazy. There is, I would say, there's no specific formula.
Okay.
I mean, I've directed quite a lot of projects and been fortunate to do so. And everyone is so different. It's like, even if it's the same client, every brief, like you just mentioned, is completely different. So every task, every technical task, every style, it's always a new challenge. And that's what I love about it. The approach I usually take to each brief is, of course, we tend to do a lot of pitching on our jobs to get the job in. And from that moment on, what we try to do as much as possible is really look into the brief, dissect it bit by bit, and then actually look at how we can elevate the treatment to the brief that's been given to us. And then that's when, all the stuff we do in future play, all the tests and experiments we've been playing around with loads of different tools, we're like, okay, so how can we use this scanning tool, for example, this blur technique to showcase speed, for example, and this amazing camera technique that so and so was playing with. Can we use that in to showcase this really cool feature on a Hublot watch or Bang & Olufsen speaker? So then what I tried to do then is just really dissect and create a story, a narrative of how we can, tell the story from start to finish within the pitch. And then I always try and leave time actually upfront to just do pure R&D within the project as well. So that just always encourages us to try to create something that's fresh, even if it is really restrictive in terms of what the client wants. I think it's always really good to kind of push the ask and surprise the client and showcase some new ideas or some different ideas that they weren't thinking as well. And I think the fundamentals of experimentation and playing with different technology really does help us with that. So yeah, from the pitch, then once we've got the pitch and we've won it, we then go straight into the front of the project, which is experimentation, R&D, and then we just play around with loads of different tests, loads of different tools, Houdini, Cinema, Touch Designer, depending on what we're trying to kind of nail, and really just keep it open and just focus on specific themes and really keep it loose. And then once we land on some really cool animations and motion tests, we then start to funnel it in and really focus on certain aspects of what's working and then create an edit from it. So yeah, it's a pretty wild experience, but it's a fun one actually, and the client loves it because they're going on it with us.
Yeah, that was my question. Like, clients are open about this kind of experiment, I guess so, because your Future Deluxe portfolio is kind of pretty wide in
That's
terms of
it.
experiments. So, but did you ever had like clients who were a bit unsure about going with a contemporary design style? If so, like, how did you handle those talks?
Yeah, it's a really good question. I think a lot of the times it is more of an educational process just
Yeah.
to say, look, this is how we work. We work in this kind of experimentation R&D phase. And what we do is we break it down to the client and say, this is actually what you're going to get. So before the project even starts, we take them through a guide of what we're going to do for each stage of the project itself. So they're aware of what it is that we're doing. So it's not a surprise. But yeah, I mean, everyone's always skeptical because, you're telling someone to just, yeah, trust you, and you'll get something amazing at the end, right? But we're not going to show you it until a certain part of the project. So imagine trying to persuade someone to do that, and it gets easier, of course. Now, Future
Yeah.
Deluxe portfolios,
Yeah, exactly.
it's very vast. So yeah, so we're blessed in that sense, and there's a lot of talented people. But yeah, it's definitely tricky, and I think every time it's never easy. But then when the client goes on the journey with us, they're like, oh, it's really nice, because you can really see them getting involved in it. And, it's not just saying, okay, look, here's the storyboards, this is what we're going to make, and, pay us. It's more like, what do you think of this test? What do you think of that test? Do you like this? What do you not like about this? And then it's more collaborative, I think. So yeah, it's way more exciting and fun, and you come up with something, hopefully that's fresh.
Okay, I see. Yeah. And previously you were talking about 3D scanning. Is there any other particular tools or software that you recently adopted that you found particularly transformative for your work?
Yeah, there's a couple I use. Polyscan is like a really good for multiple things. I mean, you could do LiDAR scanning, and you could do photogrammetry as well. So depending on what you want to kind of achieve, those two are quite good in achieving like pretty good results. There's an AI one called Lumen. I need to double check that. Yeah, that's one. Yeah, that is, that's got a lot of potential. It's got AI built in it, and I was using it in the beta stages, and you could tell if it's got an object, and it starts to matte it out as well. And it's got this crazy like point cloud visual actually, and we used that a few times, which is really exciting. So those two are the ones that I'm using at the moment, and yeah, it's crazy to just have the ability to scan someone on your phone, and I think it's only going to get better and better. So my dream would be to, when I go on set and we're filming, scan a few things, and then have the ability to do more work after we've shot the film on the day. So just having that flexibility is amazing, and we're working on a couple of things now that we're utilizing that. So yeah, I can't wait for it to get to the point where it's just like perfect, and I'm sure it's really close.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And are you playing a little bit with AI, like a stable diffusion, or you didn't have the opportunity to explore that tool yet?
Yeah, I've been playing around with it. I think not to the crazy extent. I keep hearing a lot of other directors and artists kind of playing around with it. The only kind of things I potentially would use it for would be in Runway, where you can get some depth maps from footage and taking that out of it, and then playing around with that in that scope. And of course, the scanning. So, it's more that aspect really. It's not so much to actually create content from scratch. There is one that I used, which is, I've got to get the name for you. I've totally forgot. My mind's going blank. It must be the time. But there's one which is open source, and you can put in images, and then it gives you a really rough 3D mesh. I started to play with that quite a bit, and that's really cool, because then, like say for example, clients done a shoot of photography, and they're like, oh, can you do anything with this photography? And then you can get like the base mesh, and then start playing around with some lighting on that mesh, and again play with the blurs, and then create some really cool simulations on top. So yeah, I've been playing around with that a little bit, and but nothing too crazy in terms of full scratch, like creating an image and then just being like, what do I do with the image?
Okay, I see. Yeah. And is there any recent project you've been working on where technology played like such a big role in enhancing the creative outcome? Maybe like Hublot, but Hublot is not on the final movie. You didn't really use those 3D scans, right?
Yeah, we didn't know. That was more from scratch. We
R&D,
kind of went through Marvelous, and then rigged the guy, and it was kind of from scratch. I mean, we've just done one, but it hasn't launched yet. it will be releasing soon. But I guess in technical, I'd say like the most technical impressive piece probably I've worked on is my Banging Olufsen one that I directed, and worked with an amazing team in the London studio with the likes of Ollie and a few of the guys, Christian and Ewan, and basically that was more Houdini based, and we created all these simulations that were mimicking sound through fabrics, which was really technically kind of difficult, and we set ourselves the task of creating a photorealistic eye, which I know we were talking about a bit earlier. Do clients kind of get a bit nervous when you say you're going to do something? Like in this specific case, when we said we're going to create a photorealistic eye and you will not be able to tell the difference, they were like, should we just shoot it? Are you sure? Are you sure? And I think from a technological standpoint, I think that was the most impressive. And Ollie, our talented artist in the Future Deluxe and technical director, he was the one's like, I can do it. Let's give it a go. And through the whole project, it was kind of developing. It was developing. And then when we saw the final kind of renders, we were like, wow, it is stunning. And he went through multiple softwares such as ZBrush. He was rigging it, and that was went through everything essentially, and just to create 2 shots within the film. And yeah, I'd say that was pretty technically challenging, that in particular project. And again, not a huge team, which you would think would have on something such as that. Yeah, so I think that's probably my favorite project, that one as well, just from a color perspective and the cinematic feel to it. Yeah, I really loved that one.
Yeah. There were also like this project, the Odd One Out.
Oh,
yeah. It's a really popular one as well, where I'm not sure if it's when I discovered your work, but that was the one when you kind of stand out from other designers. For sure, it was such a massive impact in the industry, that movie. And yeah, I loved it as well. With
appreciate that.
We'll put the animation.
That was a crazy one. That was I appreciate it. And I think that one, like going back a few steps, like that was when I was working at the mill, and I was working as a art director at the time, and I was working with these amazing directors, and they were so inspiring to me, and I was so inspired by them. I was like, how can I become a director? How can I become a director? And then they always kept telling me, it was like, or you have to do personal projects. You have to show what you can do. You have to keep practicing. And, luckily I did a couple of personal projects, and, they went down quite well. And with that one, it was a really crazy idea that basically a guy called Otmar from Forward Festival was like, do you want to do a title sequence? And I was like, let's go for it. And I come up with this brief and a concept about a panther running through a forest, and then changes colors and does all this crazy stuff. And I was gunning to try and become a director. So I was like, this is going to be everything I could do in one aspect, and had to persuade the mill to kind of help me out and get support from riggers, animators, lighting, fur, groom, artists, everything. And it was amazing that they supported me on that one. And it was a real mix of VFX and design together in one. And at that time, that was such a big passion of mine, combining those two together. But that was a really fun one.
Yeah, I love that project. It was so impressive.
I appreciate it.
Yeah, and is there any specific events or resources that you find valuable, like for keeping updated of the latest trends and technology? Any resources? Or you just like go on Instagram, Pinterest, and find ideas that way?
Yeah, I mean, like, of course, like Instagram is like, so everyone is so surrounded by technology now, and there's so many resources. I think, like Instagram's obviously one of them, and there's so many reference sites that are coming out, like Arena, and there's so many that are coming. I think personally for me, I'm inspired a lot by fashion and really into kind of that aspect of latest trends coming out in fashion from fashion designers. So I get inspired by what they're creating with their garments and, a lot of runway shows. I find it so fascinating how they even dress the sets and, aspects like that. And, being in New York, it's crazy. There's so many people that are, so well dressed. So it's actually so inspiring just looking around me at the moment. So, I mean, that aspect is really inspiring to me, like fashion, I would say. And of course, art galleries, there's so many here and in London, it's a big passion of mine just to go to them and check them out. And I'm not even going to preach that I read all the little descriptions. I am that guy that just runs around and then runs back out and then just sees anything. I was like, oh, that looks good. So I'm definitely not the guy that sits there and reads everything and kind of absorbs it all. I'm just kind of more of a visual learner, and then I'm in and out. But yeah, I would say like more tactile stuff like that I find quite fascinating. I think what really inspires me as well is meeting new people as well, like just hearing people's stories and their journey is so fascinating to me and inspiring. And yeah, I mean, it's crazy now to think that how much online resources we have, when I think before, like when I was making the odd one, I was like basically got Vimeo or Pinterest, basically, isn't it? You just go through that and then get inspired by staff pick. Yeah, it's crazy. It is.
Like all of us, but is there any recent tech-driven 3D motion design that have caught your eye or inspired you recently?
Yeah, I mean, like it's the tech-driven side. I think Unreal was like fascinating me, like insane amount. But I think I'm probably in the same boat as a lot of people. It's like, oh my god, it's another software I have to learn. Like, have I got the brain capacity to like learn different shortcuts on the keyboard? And so I'm kind of like in that space, but I'm so blown away by the guys in Future Deluxe that are using it. It's like insanely like inspiring. It's like to do a lot of the things that would take hours traditionally rendering, now you could do it instantly. So I'm forever kind of fascinated by that aspect and the ability to just kind of create things on the fly and then have huge resolutions where you're not having to like wait hours and hours to render. So yeah, I mean, the guys in Future Deluxe that are specifically in that space are really pushing it. And again, it's a case of how we can pitch it into projects now. So it's up to us to kind of say, oh, have you thought about it in this way, and then try and use that as a tool as well, rather than traditional. But yeah, I think there's some really cool stuff going down in that space, and yeah, I'm excited to kind of get a project, hopefully, that we can get a team around me to help me do it, so I don't have to learn it.
Maybe a short film.
Yeah, oh yes, yeah, maybe odd one out too. Jesus.
Yeah.
I think.
And what about like AR? Are you guys working on some project or not? Or not yet?
It's a good question. I think mainly I deal with more of the kind of linear formats, film formats, and more of that stuff. But I know the team are working on some cool stuff regarding AR. But yeah, I think all will be unveiled in the future.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Have you
seen talk about anything?
Yeah. Or have you seen the interview as well of Mark Zuckerberg with Lex Friedman?
Oh yes, I have. Yes.
That's crazy. Yeah.
How crazy is that?
Yeah, but they actually like 3D scanned Zuckerberg and Lex to be able to do this interview. But yeah, imagine the future to just scan yourself with your phone and being able to communicate with your I don't know, we instead of having this 2D chat, we could maybe one day being able to see each other like kind of real time.
So we'll be sitting down on like some
exactly on different environments.
Yeah,
and that's so exciting. Like technology evolving
That's
so
crazy.
fast.
But that's the point I was talking to you about, like the scanning side. Like, yeah, look at that. That's already getting amazing. If you get access to that, like on set and creating that, it would be amazing. I mean, yeah. And then there's the Vision Pro, isn't there? That's like a crazy new technology that's waiting to be used, and that's going to be super exciting to kind of get our hands on that and hopefully work on something that'd be amazing.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Do we have any Oculus at home or VR
Don't
headset? No.
You know what? I actually try and keep like super analog at home. Like everything is like a lot older. Like old school, like pen and paper. Everything. As weird as it sounds, like through the amount of technology we use in Future Deluxe, it's actually quite nice to just step away from it when I come home and detach and kind of just have a break from it actually, and then because essentially I'm doing it for 12 hours a day, and then you're like, I need a break from this for a while to reset and then get fresh and then get back into it. So yeah, I'm quite analog in that sense.
Okay.
Bit old school, bit old.
For example, you walk in a park and you suddenly have a creative ideas. You write down on your phone, on your little notebook.
Pen and paper. Notebook.
Pen
yeah,
and paper.
Old school. That's
old school.
it. Yeah.
That's great.
I think I am, yeah. Last of the generation, I guess, that would use the pen and paper. Yeah, I still love the, just doing that way, keeping it, having all my notes on a notepad and yeah, just referring back to it a lot quicker than trying to like skip through a phone. And it's not to say that I'm not addicted to my phone, like TikTok and Instagram is like, so that's the thing. It's like, I'm trying to limit the amount I look at screens, but it's easier said than done, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And do you have any designer that inspire you? Like, who inspire Raj?
Yeah, it's a good question. Actually, it's quite a funny one. You actually interviewed him, Simon. He's at the time when I think it was even before The Odd One Out, a lot further back. It was a couple of my mentors like Fred, I think Ollie as well. They all moved to Man vs. Machine, and then they said, "Oh, we're working with this guy called Simon. He's crazy." And then that Nike, I can't remember. I think it's like Hypervenom or one of the spots that he did came out, and I was like, "Oh my god! Like, how the hell? All this threading system, and all this crazy stuff, and the stuff that those guys are doing then, were really inspiring to me, and especially Simon's simulations really." Driven me to kind of, push into the more design side of things, where I was probably leaning more into the visual effects side. But when those projects were coming out, I was like, oh, what's the difference? It's basically the same thing, and he's blurring the lines. I mean, I would say he was a massive inspiration in the motion world for me, and and Fred, who was a really good mentor of mine, who I worked closely with him at some time, and all those guys at Manvi at that time.
Yeah.
Anyways,
Fred, what's his family name? Like, do you have his Instagram so I could share?
He's Huguero. Fred, I don't know, because he's working at Apple, and I think it looks like he's just, I can just get you.
Fred Wergo, yeah, sure.
Yes, and then this is Ollie, who I'm talking about, and he was a crazy guy who said, "I'm gonna go make a photorealistic eye."
Oh yeah, with this last project for, it was like Ferrari, right? No, it was Bungo Ferguson and Ferrari.
Yeah, we did the one before that one together. But we had a lot of fun. But yeah, that Ferrari one was really cool as well. But yeah, those guys, I'd say like those two, Simon, like absolutely bonkers, loving that.
Yeah.
Thank
you, man, for sharing this inspiration. And do you have like, I don't know, are you do you like reading or watching movies? Like, what inspires you on a daily basis? Like, except
I mean,
3D motion designers on
Motion
Instagram?
design. It's a good question. I mean, yeah, I mean, I love watching film. I mean, like, film's been a big part of like inspiring me through my work. Like, I always try and make it feel as cinematic. Like, you know, The Odd One Out, for example, I always wanted to make it feel, oh, it's a big screen experience. And, you know, through all my work, I try and implement some type of film theory to the project. So even though we're creating 15-second to 30-second commercials, which are super fast, I always try and think about, where we're going to put the camera, which direction is it going to go, left to right, how are we going to tell the story. You know, I always try and think like how filmmakers, you know, in the cinema world, really very thoughtful on every particular shot. I try and translate that to my films as well. But yeah, really inspired by so many films. I mean, I could list so many off for you, but I mean, off the top of my head, like, of course, you know, my all-time favorites, Interstellar, like love that one. You know, cinematic, like, love the sound design, everything's amazing about it. And yeah, I listen to a lot of podcasts as well. Really into kind of just inner workings. Actually, one of my favorite ones is A Diary of a CEO. Is quite really nice. I don't know if you listened to that one.
No, I didn't. No.
It's class. They kind of bring on like loads of different CEOs from different companies, and then they talk about their process and kind of like how they get inspired and how they deal with day-to-day challenges, and kind of it's very insightful, and it's very easy to kind of learn the way, you know, for example, someone at Nike, the head of Nike, goes about their process. And then, you know, it's Stephen Bartlett that does the interviews, and yeah, they're very insightful. So that's kind of quite inspirational from more of a kind of admin, I guess, role, or the way you kind of think about problems and day-to-day life.
The podcast is The Diary of a CEO, right?
Yeah, that's it. Yeah.
Okay, I just searched it. Okay, so for people who like to listen podcasts of Stephen Bartlett, here it is. So thank you for sharing these resources. Really interesting.
Yeah. It's class. You get some really good like guests on there, like really famous, and they really do open up, and yeah, it's pretty good. I should get a free like t-shirt from him now. I'm promoting his podcast.
That's great.
But yeah, no, he's really good. But yeah, I mean, that's quite inspiring, I guess. I'm inspired by music as well. Like, I love like listening to music. I mean, I think all motion designers, I think there's something in our brains that like are drawn. I think I found this out. Like, we have something that's linked to electronic music. Like, a lot of motion designers like electronic music, weirdly. Because I've met so many motion designers and directors are like really into electronic music. It's weird. But yeah, I love electronic music, and hip hop music is definitely like inspirational for me. And not only just the music videos as well. Like, I love watching music videos because it's crazy. They have like the smallest budgets, and then they're creating the craziest things, and you're like, how are they doing that? And it's so inspirational because they're coming up with the creative solutions with restrictions, but making the freshest content. So yeah, like music videos for me is like super inspirational and like, you know, like aspirational as well. And you know, the only thing that, you know, kind of scares me is like, yeah, it's a crazy whirlwind of a couple of weeks to try and get it done. So it's always short timelines, isn't it? But yeah.
And often shortest budget as well. So yeah, it's like really impressive what they could do. Like
yeah,
I had like also like, I don't know if you know Quentin de Ronzier. He's a French film director as well, and doing many clips for his French for different brands. And yeah, I really recommend you his Instagram account, Quentin de Ronzier. I'm sure you will love his work, and yeah, such a talented film director as well, and working for many clips. Quentin de Ronzier. I'm sharing it for the community.
Oh yes, please. Yeah, that was great.
Yeah, I will share it to you as well.
Awesome. Yeah, please do.
But yeah, it's Yeah, it's really inspiring.
Yeah,
Like
amazing. Oh,
music clip are really
oh,
such a
amazing.
huge
Yeah.
source of inspiration. So yeah, Quentin de Ronzier, I
Oh,
invite you to
yeah.
follow him. It's like
I've
work from
seen his work.
Mugler
Yeah, it's amazing.
recently, famous French rapper.
Oh, sweet.
So yeah,
Another director that is super inspiring is Ian Pond's Jules. I don't know if you Ian Pond's Jules. He does he started off doing like a lot of music videos. I mean, I'm telling a story like I know the guy personally, but his work is amazing. It's so bonkers. The camera moves and the way he tells the story is absolutely crazy. I'll post it for everyone to have a look. And yeah, this guy again is the way he approaches briefs is bonkers. There's another French director who's really
nice. Okay.
yeah could go on all day.
Yeah, it's really impressive work as well. Huh? Thank you for sharing
Yeah,
that.
so good. Yeah,
I follow him.
definitely.
Awesome. Thank you for these
No, yeah.
resources.
That's all right. Yeah, anytime.
Yeah. Most of our audience starting 3D, they try to
Okay.
learn through our YouTube channel and getting
Okay.
inspired through our interviews. So yeah, pretty young audience.
Okay. Maybe I could give some advice
Yeah, sure.
to some of the younger market. I mean, like the younger target audience. It's always helpful to kind of, from the experience I had. I mean, like one of the things I'd definitely recommend. Like the personal project stuff. Like I think it's always a lost cause where and people don't take it seriously enough. Like for me, it's been such a big influence, and like you mentioned, the odd one out, and taking those risks and trying new projects that use new technologies that doesn't have constraints of budget, timeline, and a client behind it that's picking at it for some reason. But yeah, I would say like just try and do as much personal projects as you possibly can where you can explore using new techniques, technology, and tools, and that you always wanted to try. I would definitely recommend trying to do that as much as you can. And it's the best way to find your identity as well, because when you're doing your own work, you're not trying to mimic another person's work and create something that someone's asked you to create. So yeah, do as many personal projects as possible, I think. And yeah, I mean, another thing I'd recommend is we talked about it a little bit, is how you get inspired as well. Like, of course, we all get inspired by the amazing motion work that everyone else does around us, but sometimes stepping away and going and looking around us is so underrated. Like, how do you find inspiration from things that are around us, culture, music, and fashion, and looking at different aspects rather than resorting to Instagram, which I'm a sucker for as well. So doing that as well, like, is always like really exciting to try and explore that way. And yeah, I mean, like one big thing that helped me as well is always asking for like precise and criticism on my work, and feedback in just general day to day. Like how can I make it better? Like always just ask, is this the best that it's gonna get? Like go to people that you admire and say, how would you make this better? And and really get them to kind of feedback on your work, and ask for as many opinions as you can, and select the ones that you want to kind of run with, I guess, because it's easy to get bogged down by everyone's opinions. But yeah, I'd say do that as well. So yeah, hopefully that's of some use.
Yeah, for sure. Thank you for sharing this advice. Yeah, it's really important, and I feel like every time I interview like talented motion designers like yourself, like yeah, this advice come up all the time. Do a lot of personal projects. Don't hesitate to share
Yeah,
it on your Instagram. Get
yeah,
noticed, and yeah, keep pushing, and clients will
that,
come up naturally, and studios also. So yeah, keep creating.
that's Exactly, that's the thing, isn't it? It's like, yeah, the more personal projects you get there, and then you just touched on a point like posting and just going through it is so difficult, and it like, a lot of people say don't worry about posting, like, just keep doing it, just go for it, and but in your head, in the back of your head, you're like, oh, is it good enough? Is it good enough? But it's so true, just go for it, and who cares if you only get X amount of likes? Someone
Yeah,
out there is going to be inspired by it, isn't it? And
exactly,
that's the
and
beauty of it. Yeah.
often like
Um,
the one you think will doing well, sometimes it's
does
not
it?
not that many people enjoy it. So, and sometimes it's just a
Yeah.
random post of an experiment you've done and people love it. So yeah, it's very
Yeah.
subjective. So don't hesitate to share it, and people will find it interesting. So yeah,
Definitely. Definitely. Yeah. I mean, that's pretty much
thank you,
all
Raj.
advice
Thank
I'd
you for your
have. No,
time.
no,
So
no. Thank you so much, man.
where can we
Appreciate
find
it
you?
again.
Where can you find you? Like on Instagram mainly, and do you have a website or something?
Yeah. I got my website. It's all easy. It's Raj Davsi. So on Instagram, it's Raj Davsi. So it's nice and easy. I'll post it here for you. So you probably have it. We've been messaging on it, haven't we? So um,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. It's just Raj Davsi, and then my website's rajdavsi.com. So
Mm-hmm.
very nice and easy.
Yeah,
But yeah,
exactly.
mainly I'm in Instagram. Post
Yeah, you are
work
mainly
on
on
there. Try to
Instagram,
get
no
there.
Twitter for you. X now.
Yeah, not Twitter. Not yeah. I'm on it, but I don't post as much on it. But yeah, I need to get with it, and yeah, mainly Instagram's
Okay.
good for me, I think. But yeah, no. But yeah, thank you so much. I really appreciate you taking the time to interview me and ask these amazing questions.
No, thanks to you. I always wanted to have a chat with you, and
Yeah, it's
yeah,
been
it's been
class.
a pleasure. And that was the opportunity with Motion Designer to show your work to a larger audience.
Yeah,
So thank you so much for your time again.
no, appreciate it.